Welcome back to County Connection. For this final segment, we are going to be talking about radon in your home and why that is a concern. And here to enlighten us is Dan Hendershot, Environmental Health Manager with Summit County Public Health. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Julie.
All right, Dan, you have been here in the SCTV studio before to talk about radon. Remind us why this is such a concern in Summit County.
Yeah, we've been beating this drum for quite a few years, and that's because of the importance of radon. It's the #1 cause of lung cancer among non-smokers, and it kills about 21,000 people nationally every year, which is more than drunk driving related deaths. And so it's a very important issue nationally, but it's even more important in Summit County because Summit County and the rest of Colorado, in fact, have high radon levels compared to the rest of the country.
Okay, and January is Radon Action Month, which is why you're specifically here in the studio right now. Tell us why this issue is of particular focus in the wintertime.
Yeah, so just like when you do a crash test on a car, you don't drive the car into the wall at 5 miles an hour, you drive it at 50, you know, you want worst case scenario kinda.
Right.
And so with radon, we wanna test the house with closed house conditions. That doesn't mean that you can't come and go as you normally would, but typically in the wintertime you have your windows closed and your doors closed, and that is the best case scenario for having high radon in your house because radon is a product of decaying soil and rock, and it comes up through the soil and then comes into your house and gets trapped there in your house, and it's allowed to escape when you have your windows or doors open, but when they're closed it just builds and builds and builds in the house.
Okay, and then one of the toughest things about radon is there's really no way to notice it.
Right, it's colorless and odorless. Even something like carbon monoxide, which is a big killer as well potentially, you sometimes get symptoms of a headache or that kind of thing, but with radon you don't know that you've been exposed at all until you get cancer 20, 30 years later, lung cancer. And so the only way to tell if you've got elevated radon levels is to test. But it's easy to test, it's free to test. We have free test kits at Summit County Environmental Health.
So why don't you show us, you've got some of these kits, and tell us how it works.
So this is what you'll get when you walk into the office here. It's pretty simple, about the size of a postcard. It gets even simpler when you open up this package. This is what it looks like. You've got a little foam insert here that you would place kind of like that. It just allows the air to exchange and interact with the I believe it's charcoal inside here that absorbs the radon, and you leave this sit out in your house in the lowest occupiable space. So if you have a basement, you'd want to do it in the basement. Nobody typically lives in a crawl space, although we have had reports of that in Summit County.
Lately we might have more of that.
Right, but in the lowest livable level, because that's where the radon is going to be highest. And your test lasts 3 to 7 days. You'd put it at your breathing level, which if you're sleeping is 2 feet. If you're standing, could be up to 6 feet high. And then you just fill out some information here on the front side as to the start time and the end time and the temperature of your home, and then you turn it in, mail it in. It's a self-addressed envelope, and then the company will email you back with the results. At the county, we also get the results, but we don't know your address or any real sensitive information like that. We just like to know what the general trends are in the county so that we can encourage people to test, because the EPA recommends you fix your house if you've got higher than 4 picocuries. In Summit County, our average is 10. And across the country, the average is 1.3. So you can see that we're pretty high, and for us to have access to that information is very beneficial. And Julie, we actually had one house that tested at about 280 picocuries. So it can be very high in Summit County.
Right, so there is a very real potential that people are being exposed to quite dangerous levels here in our community.
Definitely, yep, yep.
So if people go to Summit County Environmental Health, which is in the County Commons building in Frisco. Grab one of these free kits, and they find that the levels in their home do exceed that recommended maximum. Then what would they do?
So depending on the level that comes back, we can issue you a long-term test kit. As I mentioned, the short term is 3 to 7 days. A long-term kit goes 3 to 12 months. Or we can issue you another short term just to make sure that that high level you got was accurate. And then from there you would pursue mitigation. And so with mitigation, I believe next week or next month maybe we can go into mitigation a little more detail. But effectively what you're doing is trying to capture that air under your house and off-gas it outside before it comes into your house. It's not super expensive, it's not cheap either, but we've seen anywhere from about $900 to $2,000 in Summit County for mitigation.
Okay, so definitely doable for a lot of folks.
Yeah, and we, there's no building permits typically required for that type of work, and so to make sure that the project is done correct to the standards that are recommended for success, we recommend folks use a registered mitigation specialist.
Okay.
And we have links to those lists on our website as well as other information on radon.
Okay, great. And then that's a state program, that registration.
It is, yeah. Actually, I think it's they're registered with the National Environmental Health Association.
Okay.
But I believe the list is on the state's website. I'd have to double check on that.
Okay. Well, we'll dive into that a little more deeply next month then.
Sounds good.
So if folks can focus in January on getting their homes tested, and once you know those results, then we'll come back in February and talk about mitigation in more detail.
Great New Year's resolution to finally test your home for radon. And if you've tested and it's come back high, your resolution could be to go ahead and fix that, because that's kind of the next hurdle, is actually committing to mitigation, you know?
Right.
Because that's where the dollars come into play. But radon is frequently tested at point of sale. A lot of buyers are real knowledgeable about the risks and the associated valuation of your home if you have high radon. And so your house is probably going to get tested in the future by someone, if not you, and frequently the sellers have to pay for that. And so we encourage people to not keep kicking that can and delaying it, but go ahead and do it, because you're going to have to do it eventually maybe, and you might as well reap the benefits from having a mitigated house while you're living there.
All right, sounds great. So Dan, how can people get in touch with you to get a hold of these kits?
Yeah, they can just swing by our office. As you mentioned, we're in the County Commons, which is downstairs of the library in Frisco. Okay. We're right there with building department and planning department and engineering.
Okay. And then if people want to give your office a ring if they have questions, or if they want to find some info online, how would they go about doing that? Yeah,
our phone number is 668-4070, and there's almost always someone there who can answer your questions on radon.
All right, perfect. Great. Well, thanks very much for coming in, Dan, and we will look forward to talking with your staff next month about mitigation.
Great, my pleasure.
All right, and thanks to those of you who have joined us for another episode of County Connection. We will look forward to seeing you next month.